Hello, my name is Richard Tubbs, and this is my artifact analysis presentation for MAE 670. I have been teaching since 1995, and for the last 3 years, I have been principal of Pacific Rim Elementary, and 13 years prior to that, principal of Hope Elementary in Carlsbad, California. The following slides is a representation of my work in my pursuit of a Master of Arts in Education with a social-emotional learning emphasis. My plan of study, as prepared in my first class, MAE 610, is represented here, along with the program learning outcomes as learning targets, identified as whether I was introduced to the PLO or developed something related to the PLO or mastered the PLO. You'll see in my first class, MAE 610, I believe that all PLOs were addressed, and more specifically, the artifacts that I chose show that I was introduced to practitioner research questions. The first draft: what is the relationship between the implementation of a cooperative learning-based teaching of Harmony SEL and the measurement of the peer relationship skills of primary grade students? This led me to a review of additional research studies out there. And so this introduction to those research steps align with PLO 4 and 3. And because I had to develop this project, you'll see my rating there. I also created a Portfolium account and uploaded artifacts from every single class that is represented within this program. For ITI 670, my second class, Introduction to Social Emotional Learning, this provided me with quite the eye-opening experience, as it just resonated with me of what I wanted to do with my own professional development at my own school. As part of that, I created a little bit of a, newsletter or infographic titled From a Nation at Risk to a Nation of Hope. And I listed how you can implement the SEL programs at a school site. And as part of that, my other artifact, I had to take my own SEL assessment to figure out where I fit with those core competencies, and learned a little bit about culturally responsive pedagogy, and those links are active within the slideshow, so you can see the reports that I created there. I had to reflect on my own professional development through all of these processes with a video journal and discussion boards connecting with my classmates. For ITI 672, Social Emotional Learning in Action, I created a newsletter that I provided to my entire community, highlighting how we build connections in our community through SEL, and even more, created next steps of how to implement this to make sure that we are identifying all 5 core competencies as they align with the CASTLE program. It's through this course that I worked on PLO 2 to introduce a new learner experience that increased positive peer interactions for our Learning Center students. I also developed the single plan for student achievement that centered on implementing the Harmony SEL program. For SEL 600, Social Emotional Learning Education Communities, I created a Code of Ethics infographic, and this also identified how we should operate within our school to make sure that we're aligned with professional standards for educational leaders. It is through this class that I also completed my first literature review, and I also provided a summary through video of why I believe SEL is so important for our education communities. I was introduced to PLO 3 and 4 through the work of this class, and the evidence of that, my literature review, you can click on that link to see that in more detail. SEL 605, Identity and Culture. This course required me to assess my own personal culture, including my implicit biases, stereotypes, assumptions, values, and beliefs, and how this all affects my work in the educational community. Through this course, I developed an activity for my own staff to bring awareness of the intersectionality in our school, which aligned with PLO 1. You'll also see right there in the center of your screen this artifact on display. On the far right hand of your screen, Unpacking Bias and Becoming Anti-Bias. This was quite the, reflective process as I took several implicit association tests available from Project Implicit, and I highly recommend them for anyone to better understand implicit biases and how they might impact your work with learners. Bottom right-hand corner, you'll see my final report and artifact, Culturally Responsive Teaching and Social Emotional Learning. This helps anyone who read it better understand that we connect with students when we incorporate their culture, their race, ethnicity, class, gender, region, and even religion, because all these things make up their identity, and it'll help them better relate within the classroom when we recognize these things about them. SEL 610, Cognition and Emotion. This course introduced several new topics to me that allowed me to have kind of a deeper dive into how our brain functions. This class aligned with PLO 1 as I summarize the introductory learning components using an infographic as seen in the center of your screen. I also was introduced to a new digital tool and how to put a new skill on display as I created a podcast to summarize my understanding of cultural diversity and how this affects linguistic diversity within the classroom. Neurodiversity was also introduced in the podcast with a connection to Zaretta Hammond's culturally responsive teaching concepts. I also completed an emotional intelligence assessment, and that aligns with PLO 1 as a digital tool to help people better understand and recognize their own feelings. And it was insightful for me as I was able to recognize and identify my own shortcomings in understanding feelings and emotions. I highly recommend an emotional intelligence assessment. SEL 615, Social Emotional Learning Action Research Methods. This course happened right in the middle of my program and allowed me to take a lot of the building blocks that I learned in the other courses and put them all together into an actual action research project. You'll see the artifact presented in the center of your screen with an active link on the right-hand side, so you can read my research, which I believe was very timely during the COVID school closures. I examined and wanted to identify the impact on the relationship between elementary teachers and their students due to COVID-19 school program changes. We all understand that student-teacher relationship is very key to the success of students in the classrooms. And so what did teachers actually do to help build and promote, maintain, and sustain those relationships? This also required me to develop a competency in meeting the legal and ethical requirements to conduct research in a school setting, which aligns with PLL 4, a developed area, along with developing my action research project. My 8th plan of study was not just one course, but actually 5 modules, part of my certificate of online teaching. I selected 2 artifacts because they represent how I developed online digital tools, which aligns with PLL 1. My competency in this area provides for a better learning experience with clear expectations for online behavior with students, including a classroom statement of conduct and 6 videos that I curated from the internet to reinforce online expectations. The other artifact is an introduction set of slides to welcome the students and make the experience of online learning more personalized for them. And the skills that I developed through these modules helped me produce this work, which I was able to immediately integrate into my connection with students in a digital platform. These self-paced modules are all part of the prior learning experience option in the MAE program, which allows up to 9 units to be applied towards your advanced degree. The 9th class in my plan of study is actually the remaining modules for the Certificate of Online Teaching, modules 6 through 10. Within this program, this allowed me to demonstrate mastery of PLL 1, 2, and 4 as I created a variety of items for my students for use within the digital world. 3 of the artifacts I chose are an extension of these digital tools, and they demonstrate how I customize and promote individualized learning experiences for students. My students now use WeVideo as a collaborative tool to allow them to present their own summary of learning and understanding. You'll see in the artifacts listed on the right several different links to video projects that I've created, which helps with that community connection, also demonstrates how the students will complete a project. And you'll see that I have a digital portfolio, which is a sample for how students will use Google Sites, a new program that I use to be able to demonstrate Mastery PLL4 and reflecting on my work as I expect students to reflect on their work as well. And now this takes us to the final course in my plan of study, MAE 670, Applied Practitioner Research and Customized Study, where I believe the artifacts show that I have mastered all 4 PLOs. It required me to demonstrate an advanced understanding of assessments and learning through the use of digital tools, PLL1, and I've designed learning experiences and applied practitioner research methods to study and inform instruction through the reviews and in my own proposal. My reflective practices, part of PLL4, are grounded in current research, and my own proposal kind of fills a gap that I noticed when identifying SEL programs and how they measure decreasing areas of disruptive behaviors among elementary grade students. And while this proposal has changed a little bit from the first planned proposal, I think it's reflective of my growth and better understanding of the current research and how I can contribute in my own research to better identify the social emotional skills and the measurement of these disruptive classroom behaviors that I've heard from friends and seen in news reports are increasing, likely due to the disruption of COVID school closures. So I believe it's also very timely as well. My pursuit of a master's degree has been an interesting educational journey. I started in 1999 at San Jose State and moved to San Diego with only 2 classes remaining for my degree. Who does that? Well, with too many roadblocks limiting the transfer of my units to continue my education, I focused on my role as a teacher and a principal. When I implemented the Harmony Social Emotional Learning Program at both of my schools, I wanted to immerse myself into a full understanding of how SEL can serve as a foundational program to improve learner experiences. This desire led me to the new National University Masters in Social Emotional Learning. After a change in scholarship status, I was able to transfer 6 of the SEL classes to the Master of Arts in Education. And throughout all these programs, I have continued to develop new skills and a deeper understanding of SEL concepts and practices with the mastery of content to better enhance the learner experience at my school. Reflecting on the work I've put into the activities and the research that I've conducted to inform my depth of knowledge enhances my own development as an educator for my community. This artifact analysis of how each graduate level course aligns with the program learning outcomes demonstrates my mastery to qualify for a Master of Arts in Education with a social emotional learning emphasis. Thank you for all of these learning opportunities, and thank you for your consideration.